You're listening to The Donor Doctor Show, where your host, James Newberry, will help you improve the health of your fundraising. Now over to James.
Hello, this is The Donor Doctor, and I have a special guest today. It's David Garfinkel. He's the world's greatest copywriting coach, and he is host of the Copywriters podcast, which has just had its 27th episode. Is that correct?
Yeah, we just released 27th today.
That's great. It's on confidence, and the last one was on avoiding hype. But you're a pretty good copywriter, too. Vice President J. Walter Thompson, which is a well-known advertising agency, said that you were the best copywriter he'd ever worked with. It would be hard to be a really good coach if you weren't a good copywriter, too. Am I right about that?
Well, yeah, I have a lot to say about that, but the short answer is yes.
Okay, very good. Now, I've of course listened to every in fact, I went on iTunes and it said that I downloaded all of them, and so I listened to each one of them.
Wow.
I know you were a journalist, and I was wondering if that how that helped, and maybe if it hurt you at all when you became a copywriter.
Yeah, it did both, and the reason is that there are a lot of things in journalism that really overlap with copywriting, but there are a lot of things that stand in opposition to copywriting. I actually put together a couple of laundry lists of how it helped and how it hurt. And I was a journalist back in the day when journalists didn't go on CNN and Fox News and MSNBC to pretend they weren't giving their opinions, okay? I mean, we were, there was an old school definition of journalism that I think some journalists still hew to, that journalists would report facts and opinions went on the editorial page. But one thing neither editorial writers nor journalists would do would be promote anything, write any ads, get in favor of a product, except, people who are doing consumer reviews here and there. And so, and that's not how I was trained. I was trained with the who, what, why, when, where, and the inverted pyramid, and to cover both sides of the story, the, so-called objectivity, as if there were only two sides to a story. And that habit was dyed in the wool pretty deep with me, and I think with anyone who's worked in real journalism. So that got in the way. But let me tell you some of the good things, in case anyone listening is a journalist thinking of coming over to what we do. I learned to organize my thoughts, very important, and write fast when I needed to. I was in a wire service for McGraw-Hill, which is not the same as the AP, but we had daily publications. We had to write stories sometimes, in the course of an hour or two. When you have to do that, it has to be right. You learn how to think real fast. I learned interviewing skills, and a lot of copywriters don't do that, or don't do that well, or don't do that enough. You really got to talk to people. It is a very solitary profession, no doubt about it, but you are a person selling to other people, and you need to talk to people, including your client, including if it's you're writing for a cause, including the people who are doing the work in the field. If you're writing about a product, maybe the inventor, maybe talk to customers, maybe even talk to donors. I don't know. I don't have enough background in
I totally agree
fundraising
with you. Interviewing is very important. I think I probably haven't mentioned that enough, but that's when you're going to get the good stories. Is by taking something lunch. Mm-hmm.
I mean, stories are so important in any kind of copywriting. I learned a lot about research and specificity and being concise. The way it hurt, like I said, is that whole habit of objectivity and the tendency to be too married to facts. Not that you want to lie. You don't want to lie. You don't want to misrepresent. But part of copywriting is prospective. It's about the future. And you need to be open to what if, what if you donate? What if you buy this? What if you don't? What's going to happen? And that's not exactly what I learned or did in journalism. But I think the main thing, especially when it comes to general interest and political journalism, consumer journalism, is the basic mindset is anti-entrepreneur, anti-commercial, anti-selling, anti-giving a recommendation. It's not necessarily anti-capitalist. I know a lot of people think certain news publications are way to the left. I don't always agree. Sometimes I do. But there is a mindset, there's a fault-finding imperative in journalism where you're looking for flaws, you're looking for errors. It's sort of hard to convince someone when you have this, judgmental mindset of, things not being perfect.
Now, we have a mutual friend who's kind of my hero, somebody I aspire to be like. Is Richard Armstrong.
Oh, Richard's great. Yeah.
We had him on as a guest earlier, and of course, what I'm most impressed about him is just his versatility. Mm-hmm. I mean, just everything. From he started out in fundraising, now he's in commercial, and he's done it well. Now, interestingly, Herschel Gordon Lewis actually thought fundraising copywriting was more difficult. I mean, I know you haven't done a lot of that. What are your thoughts on what's more difficult?
Well, I think it depends on the person. I don't know much about Herschel, but I imagine he was not very passionate about causes, right? And I think you need to be, not about causes in general, but certainly about the causes that you're writing for. And I would consider, raising funds for a political candidate being a cause in a sense, because they're representing ideals and part of a movement.
Right.
And that doesn't need to be your whole life, but you need to feel that way. I did a critique for a guy. I keep all my clients confidential, so I won't be very specific here, but this guy was doing some copywriting for a political party, and he was very, very passionate about the party and the ideals and the dangers that other parties would bring, not just to the individual, but to the populace, to the country, to the Constitution, all those things. I think you need to be able to feel that. I think it's not a good idea to fake it, but it's easier to fake it with a product than it is to fake it with a cause.
I think you have a good point there. I would say that a lot of commercials become more difficult. You see, like my ex-wife worked for Time Life Books. It's not really around anymore. They have the music. Phillips Publishing.
I did a little work for them, not nearly as much as she did, I'm sure. But yeah, I remember them. They were a great company.
Publishing is, but the newsletters. I don't see like Stansbury. They have really good. I mean, that's like, I don't know if the advice is good, but the marketing is outstanding. A lot of these alternative health. So I actually think that it's become easier fundraising, but it's debatable. Now, one of your most successful engagements was Abacus Travel. I saw something that $5 million. You came up with a great idea. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Sure. Well, this was in the early 90s, and Abacus is a business that could not exist today because it had a unique advantage in the marketplace that it could do things that now you can do on your phone, right? But in the early 90s, things were quite different, and dealing with travel agents could be very time-consuming, and tickets were paper, and you couldn't always get the best service or the best care. And Abacus had a different idea. Their idea was that they would become sort of like an in-house travel agent without actually moving into someone's company. And they worked for small entrepreneurial companies. They did a lot of work for stock theater and movie crews. And they had a problem. They had this beautiful brochure. I mean, I'm sure it could have won advertising awards in New York, and it could have even hung in the Museum of Modern Art. But the response was real easy to measure, 0. They weren't getting any response from it. And what I learned is they were terrible at getting new clients, and they were great at keeping clients happy. So they got referrals, but they wanted to grow. And I talked to them a lot, and what I found out is, well, 2 of the executives, including the owner, one executive had been a vice president of 2 different airlines. That was Dwayne, and Bonnie had not worked in the airline. She was the owner. She was a CPA, but Dwayne was really the operations guy who made the magic happen. And they had figured out ways for these companies to get like rock bottom rates, white glove service. They would follow them virtually, such as you could in the early 90s, on the trip, make sure everything worked out. In other words, it was like a very high-end travel agency, but they developed systems and techniques to give people all of this really concierge-level service at a bargain basement price. And don't ask me how they did it. I don't know, but they did it, and it worked. I realized that's not going to get people in the door. That's what's going to keep them as clients, and their clients lasted for years because no one else offered anything like this, and Abacus made their clients very happy. So what I did is I really zeroed in on who the target customer was, and the target customer was a new business owner, not like a department manager at AT&T, right? But somebody who'd started a business, had grown very successful, and I don't know how much you've dealt with successful entrepreneurs, but they have a problem. Nobody gives a crap about them. The investors just want faster growth. All of their relatives think that they're an ATM. The employees think that they're Simon Legree. It's sort of a no-win. The only people who generally understand them are other entrepreneurs, and often they're in competition. So it's sort of lonely at the top, even of a small company. And what we decided to do is make them an offer. If you'll sit down with us for 30 minutes, we'll show you how you can have an incredible winter vacation, first class white glove treatment at beer bottle prices, champagne service at beer bottle prices. And we added one thing. We said, if you'll just meet with us, we'll give you a box of Godiva chocolates for your time.
Right, yeah.
And they came pouring in. And the funny thing is, none of them actually wanted the vacation. They didn't have any time for the vacation, but they loved the fact that someone would know enough about their situation and talk to them in a language that really resonated with them and showed that they cared to make them that offer. And then when they found out, how much money they could save on all of their business travel, not just for themselves, but for their team, they signed up. And they ended up making $5 million a year. That's gross. Those days, 10% profit margin in the travel business, no longer, of course. So $5 million for 8 years, and then they sold the company. So that's $40 million that came out of that letter. They had to stop mailing the letter, and because they were in Phoenix, they could not mail it in the summer anyway, because all the Godiva chocolate would turn into chocolate soup.
Oh, that's a great idea. Well, it's an excellent offer. Now, one of the more interesting podcast episodes I listened to was you were researching multi-level marketing,
mm-hmm.
and you found that there was a desire for community.
Mm-hmm.
And what I thought was interesting, I went to see the artist Peter Max. My parents liked him, and and it was interesting. I was just really trying to find more about the art, but I was feigning interest, like I was going to buy something. But the offer they had was a trip to New York City at it wasn't the Carlisle, but it was a fancy hotel with other Peter Max buyers. It was the same community. There's a hunger for community is what you really tapped into. And you wouldn't think about it for multi-level marketing because it's every I seem to have run it. I haven't had it lately, but when I was younger, I had lots of friends into that, and you wouldn't know that they were inviting you to that. But it was always like, you're going to get rich was their thing, but they should have been talking about community, apparently. Is that right?
Well, no, they were probably doing the right thing. I mean, it's hard to hook somebody with the idea of community, but once you have them in front of you, if it's multi-level marketing, they're more interested in that. What I was actually promoting there was not a multi-level marketing scheme. Let me tell you about multi-level marketing. I love a lot of the products. I'm a copywriter. I tend to spend a lot of time alone. I play well with others, but I'm very selective at who I play with.
No, I wouldn't think you would be into that. But right. I found it interesting that even though that wasn't the primary thing, they really were attracted. My point is there's a hunger for community that charities tap into.
You're right, but let me explain. What I was helping my clients sell was not a multi-level marketing opportunity. It was a mentoring opportunity from someone who'd cracked the code on how to make money in multi-level marketing. And it was an expensive seminar. And we sold over $1 million in 2 or 3 days. It would have been 1 day, but we melted the server. But the thing I found is that just pushing on the money wasn't going to do it. As I interviewed 6 people who they referred me to who were very successful in multi-level marketing, the essence of mentions of community kept coming up and connection. And then I went back to my client and I said, it doesn't seem like most of these people, even the ones who are making money, really care that much about money. They just want to be part of something. She said, you're absolutely right, David. And so I tuned or I slanted the copy a lot in that direction. Of course, we talked about the money you would make, but the idea of being part of a community that shares your values, that you can feel safe with, that you can talk about things with, that was what really appealed to the people who signed up. That was the missing piece for me that I never would have thought of if I hadn't done all that research.
Well, my point is I think charities need to do that. I mean, and many do. They have cruises,
that's a good point.
Trips, and I've seen it candidates that Bernie Sanders had at meetups, cruises to Cuba or like trips there. I've seen The Nation magazine. I've seen National Review offer trips too, where they have speakers that the conservative audience would like. So it's a way to meet people. Again, just like. I'm just saying it's interesting, MLM, Peter Max, The Nation magazine, you wouldn't think there'd be a lot of commonality, but the desire for community, there's a hunger for it.
Well,
people don't join things as much.
All of our institutions, I've heard Steve Schmidt talk, you know who he is, right? The former political operative now.
For McCain.
For McCain, yeah. He has said this, and I've seen it confirmed in independent research I've done, that every institution in this country, except the military, every other institution has lost the trust of the populace. Now, those institutions, the schools, the government, the this, the that, the PTA, the Boy Scouts, whatever, that's how people used to have community just by virtue of the institutions and the structures that were there. Those things are now suspect or they're very polarized. And people really, we're herd animals at the core. We want to be in the community, but we've come to a time where people who have different political or social views often can't even talk to each other. It just flares up, right?
Yeah, it's
terrible. The idea of offering a community of like-minded people where you can be comfortable, be yourself, explore ideas. Or just share experiences. Yeah, I think that's a very good idea for fundraising. Why not?
Now headlines. Headlines is email equivalent would be the subject line, and maybe the first line of a fundraising letter would be the equivalent. You had 3 or 4 episodes on it, so I know that was your start.
Yes.
So you have a lot of strong opinions on that. Care to talk about a little bit about the importance of headlines?
Sure. The commercial copywriters, as you call them, I think is a great name, especially the ones who did really mass mailing mailing primarily and tests of print ads. Back in the old days, people like John Caples, like David Ogilvy, like Ted Nicholas, they all agree that your headline will determine 80 to 90% of the success of any piece of copy, any appeal, any letter, any message. And it only makes sense, if you grab a person's attention in the right way, right from the start, you're going to have a much better chance of success, everything else being the same. So there's a fine art to doing headlines. You need to get someone's attention. I'll just be very blunt about this. You need to either make a very big, appealing promise, or you need to indicate a danger, make a threat. Not that you're threatening them, but you need to point out a threat in a way that is conversational and believable, but still a little larger than life. And there are a lot of different ways to do it. But the best way to do it, and this is hard for beginning copywriters. It's easier after you've learned about this and you have learned to keep your ears perked for the way people really talk in real life when they have their hair down, not when they're trying to sound impressive or speak in a respectable way, but just when they're talking like folks. It needs to sound like that. And so there are a lot of different formulas. I came up with 3 different types: the curiosity headline, the problem solution headline, and the laziness headline. Even within those categories, there are many different types of headlines, but the category, checking the boxes is not as important as having something that reaches somebody emotionally in a way that's believable and makes them want to read the next sentence.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I have one last question for you. You also had an episode just on bullets.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if you said this. Do you think there's a limit? I always like bullets with 3. What are your thoughts on bullets?
You mean in a letter, is there a maximum number of bullets that you can have?
Yeah, I mean, I see some people have like 8 or 9 bullets. It seems like it's too much for me. I don't know. Well,
it depends on a lot of things. I think if you have a product which has a lot of, what I look at as bullets is like headlines or ads for facets of a product or facets of a cause or facets of a reason to donate. Like the thing that has facets is a jewel, and you're looking at all these different, sides of it, faces. I've seen letters with pages and pages of bullets, and it depends on the circumstance. I'd say, generally speaking, the more resistance you're going to get to the sale, the more bullets you need. I also think it's probably very different in fundraising than it is in copywriting, because people with fundraising, I think story is probably more important reason why. But I think you can have a lot of bullets. It's the old Abraham Lincoln saying, "How long should a man's legs be long enough to reach the ground?" And no list of bullets is going to be too long if it keeps the person's interest. In a way, bullets are answers to unspoken questions of what is this going to do for me? What's going to happen if I don't get this or I don't make this donation? And what's different about this, and what's exciting about this? What's my life going to be like? What's the world going to be like? What's my particular cherished cause going to be like if I make the donation, if I don't? So I don't have a rule of thumb. In a episode of the podcast that we're going to record on Thursday, I'll give you a little sneak preview. I'm going to give people a way to cut their writing time in half. And this may sound counterintuitive, but one of the things I'm suggesting is, depending on what kind of copy you're going to be writing, I'm suggesting they write between 20 and 100 bullets, not just to have bullets to plug in, but because the writing of bullet points actually, it expands and focuses your thinking in a way that that gets you more in the frame of mind of writing inside of the world of your prospect. And
no, I like that. I try to do that. I don't think of it as a bullet, but I say I got to get this point in here somewhere. You know what I mean? And I'll put them on a sheet of paper. I'm going to work this in. Sometimes I'm not able to get an idea in there, but it's maybe some research I've done, and it's a good fact. Maybe it could be a bullet. Maybe it could be put somewhere else in the letter. But yeah, I like that idea. Idea of doing more research at the beginning, and so you don't have to write as long.
Sure, because ultimately, a letter. I'm going to walk through an area here where there's going to be a little bit of echo, so bear with me. Okay. Ultimately, a letter is a condensation of a much bigger idea, of a much longer message. You're only going to get so much attention from a prospective donor, from a prospective customer, and so you've got to keep it interesting, but you've really got to cover all grounds before you, all the points, and then select and boil it down to something almost telegraphic that yet reads as though it's conversational. You don't want it to read staccato and abrupt. You don't want it to read like pardon me for even saying this, a tweet or a text message, but you want it to be as concise as possible. But getting to that point, you want to have as much to draw from. You want to have thought it through as carefully as possible in order to be able to select just the right points and express them in just the right way.
Well, I appreciate you taking your time today. Again, the podcast is the Copywriters Podcast. You have a book. It's Breakthrough Copy. Is that right? I read.
It's called Breakthrough Copywriting.
Yeah, yes. Copywriting, and it's somewhat similar to Eugene Schwartz' Breakthrough Advertising, which is, of course, a famous book. It's real expensive, so it kind of adds some mystique to it. And if somebody wanted to contact you, would you just would you go to iTunes and join there?
There are a few ways. If someone's interested in getting a critique or even being mentored by me in copywriting, they can go to garfinkelcoaching.com, and that's spelled GARFINKEL coaching.com, and there's some descriptions of services there and some forms. And just in terms of contacting me, probably the best way is to follow me or friend me on Facebook. I have a personal presence or name, or what, I don't know the terminology, but I'm David Garfinkel SF, and then I have a public figure page called David Garfinkel Copywriting Coach. So, I'll answer brief messages. I mean, I coach people for a living, so I'm not going to solve problems for them over a message, but those are probably the best ways to contact me, I would say.
Well, I'm really appreciative for you coming on. I would encourage the listeners here to go and listen to your podcast. You've had 27, and they're all, what I'm most impressed having done these podcasts. Interviews are easier than doing it when you're mostly doing. I know you have Nathan helping you, but you're consistent around a half hour, all of them. It's amazing.
Well, yeah, thanks. I got to give a lot of credit to Nathan Fraser, who's my producer. He came up with the idea of how we're going to do the podcasts, and he's just a very good audio editor, so he keeps them down to about half an hour.
Yeah, no, it's well worth for any copywriter to. It's not just entertaining, but great value. It's not one of those things. Well, if you sell some other product, I mean, you give away a lot of value.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
So no, I really would recommend anybody listening to the show to go on your show. And I do thank you for coming on, and I wish you well, and I hope to meet you someday.
Yeah, hope to meet you too. It's a pleasure to talk with you.
Thank you. Talk to you later.
Okay, take care. Bye.